Well, now that all four of the roles from Frontier Pursuits and then the Moonshiners have been out for quite a while, most people who are playing have maxed out all the roles, including me, and I'm a late adopter. I didn't even start playing the game until the beginning of the year. So I've had everything done for a while now, or I've had all the roles maxed out, I should say. Let's talk about the four roles, review them, and see what I think they are worth. The first role that I unlocked was the Bounty Hunter, but fairly shortly after I unlocked the Trader and the Collector. And of course, in order to unlock the Moonshiner, you need to have the Trader leveled up to a certain level, level 5, or you need to have done a couple of resupply missions. Although realistically, if you've done that, that probably gets you to about level 5, so it's really kind of the same thing. Moonshiner was the last one I unlocked. It was the last one that I spent some time in. I didn't do anything with it for a little while, really very much, but it turns out that that's now my favorite of the roles. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I will review the four roles in the order that I unlocked them, and I can't remember for sure the order that I did Trader and Collector, so I'll just do them in that order because I'm pretty sure I finished them, at least Trader first and then Collector. So we'll do Bounty Hunter, Trader, Collector, and then Moonshiner. Bounty Hunter, like I said, the first one I unlocked, it was actually the last one I finished. The reason is because it's a little tedious to do, and it doesn't really have a lot of payoffs, so you have a little bit less incentive to get involved with it. That said, the Bounty Hunter has some pretty cool stuff. Sometimes the missions can be a lot of fun. Sometimes, however, they can be really kind of frustrating, and I don't know how many times I have accidentally killed the bounty, and that's kind of frustrating because there's a huge firefight going on, and you shoot them while you're shooting all the other bad guys without realizing that you shot the one you didn't want to shoot, or you're stuck in a firefight with his gang and the bounty's a runner, and then you got to go chase him down. That can be really frustrating. There's been times where I've picked up a bounty poster and it was on the far side of New Austin, and before I could even leave town to go chase him down, he had already escaped off the edge of the map. So there's a bunch of weird little glitches that sometimes make the bounty hunter really kind of frustrating, and sometimes it's just frustrating anyway because the bounties tend to be surrounded by gangs, and you get in these big firefights, and you're trying to catch the bounty while also navigate the firefight. A lot of times that means if you're not careful, you get killed, and you got to start over. It means if you're not careful, you kill the bounty, and then you get a much smaller payout. Or it means that if you're not careful, the bounty makes a run for it while you're busy fighting, and then he either gets away, or there's a long, frustrating chase to try and prevent him from getting away. So it's a little unfortunate, but there are some other bounties that I liked quite a bit, and some of the legendary bounties I thought were really fun. Some of them I thought were frustrating. Basically, I get frustrated the most at bounties who are runners, because the way that they show up on your map is that they flash very briefly and then they go away, and you just can't, it's hard to see them. And I'm always frustrated with the bounties who are runners, when you show up and then you end up getting in a fight with their gang, but they're running. And if they don't run, if they're on a wagon with the rest of their gang, you shoot the driver and they usually just sit there while you fight off the rest of the gang. That's nice. Sometimes they're in a camp and you just kill everybody else and they just kind of stay there. Either they fight too, or they just kind of huddle down and try not to get shot. Sometimes there are bounties where you have to go track them, and this is very similar to the legendary animal hunting in single player, where you find a clue and then you follow the track. However, unlike with legendary animals, there's a lot of little red herrings and dead ends, and sometimes you got to spend some time running around to do it. Those are kind of nice because in addition to everything else, they don't ever have a gang with them. So you just kind of, once you find them, you pull out your lasso, run out, hog tie them, and then off you go. The other thing, there's been bounties where I had to go to the area and make a bit of a ruckus so they would come out to deal with me, and I ended up throwing dynamite or fire bottles around and destroying stuff so they would come out. That was kind of fun. So some of the bounties have been really fun, but not all of them. The other thing about the bounty, like I said, is that the payout is not very good. They don't pay a ton of money. It's almost, I guess with some of the multiple star legendary bounties, you can get, a decent amount of money, but compared to the other roles, it's still not much. They do, however, pay out a little bit of gold, although it's still not worth it doing compared to daily challenges. Daily challenges are still a much better payout for gold than bounties. But it's still, it's okay. It's something to do. You don't do bounties when you're looking to earn money. And so when you want to do bounties is when you kind of either don't have anything that you're saving up to buy, or you've got so much money that you don't care. And you just think that doing bounties sounds like a lot of fun. And sometimes they can be, especially, like I said, if you get a bounty that you like. And some of the legendary bounties are fun. Sometimes, though, the other bounties are just fine. And I have actually not done all the legendary bounties. There's, others, though, that I've done all 5 stars worth of legendary bounties. So, I'm kind of hit or miss on the legendary bounties. I maxed out the role without doing really very many of them, only a few of them that I've done. And I did Yukon Nick and Etta Doyle several times. Although I started getting really frustrated with the ladder after a while, I didn't get it all the way to 5. But what is the bounty? So I explained what you do in terms of just what the missions are. But the other thing about the bounties that's kind of nice is you can do them pretty much anywhere. There's bounty boards all over the map. No matter where you are, there's going to be a bounty board that's nearby. There's one in Tumbleweed. There's one at Benedict Point. There's one at Armadillo, for example, and when you're kind of out there in the middle of nowhere areas of the map. But, again, in West Elizabeth, you got them in Strawberry, you got them in Blackwater, you got them at Fort Riggs, you got them at Fort Wallace, you got them at Valentine, you got them at New Hanover. They're just, no matter where you go, there's a bounty board that's nearby. And then when you catch the bounties, you usually bring them to the nearest jail, which could be, any of the jails, really. Sometimes if there isn't one that's nearby, you bring them to a bounty wagon. The only other thing that's a little frustrating, although I understand why they did it, because they kind of wanted to gate how much you could earn, and you can't just keep picking stuff up too fast, is that you actually make more, both in money and in gold, and in XP for that matter, if you wait longer, if it takes longer to do your mission. So this is something that a lot of players are frustrated by, and I agree it's kind of irritating, but I do understand why they do it. A lot of times you do your bounty mission, and then you have to stand there right next to where you turn the bounty in and just wait for the clock to run down to 30 seconds. And then if you turn it in at under 30 seconds, that's when you get the biggest payoff. So the last, like I said, it was the last one that I finished because the payout was bad enough on it relative to the other roles that I just spent more time doing the other roles, because there was always something I wanted to spend money on, which is still true. I haven't made so much money that that's not true anymore. But I do enjoy doing a lot of the bounty missions, and in fact, just today I had some time to kill, and that's what I did. I did a legendary bounty that I hadn't done already. The other thing is that the bounty hunter has some pretty cool unlocks, and I'm going to talk a little bit about all the unlocks. I'm not going to go through the entire list because I don't need to, but let me talk about some of the stuff that I think is pretty cool, worth getting, some of the stuff that you should probably avoid. First off, let's lay out something that's common to all the roles. They come in 4 tiers. The first one is novice, then there's promising, then there's established, then there's distinguished. Basically, this is tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there are 5 levels each. These levels are not the same as your character levels. They're levels that are unique to your bounty hunter role. And at levels 1 through 5, you're in tier 1. Levels 6 through 10, you're in tier 2, and so on and so forth. You get some unlocks every level, and you get some unlocks that are within the tier, and you can spend tokens that you get with your level ups to unlock stuff that's within your tier, but then you also still have to buy it. Whereas the things that are just every level, you just get them automatically. Although, to be honest with you, a lot of times what you get at every level are just unlock tokens that you can then spend on your tier unlocks. Every role has an outfit associated with each tier. These are complete outfits because they are such. You can't really break them down. The things that you can actually use separately are the hat, and that's about it. Some of the roles outfits you can change the hat on all of them, and you can use the outfit hat on, and building your own outfits. You can put a mask or eyeglasses or something like that on. With some of the outfits you can put a glove on, but a lot of them you can't. Most of the outfits by default are appropriate for hot weather, and in order to get them appropriate for average, you need to put on some really heavy gloves and maybe a warm hat. Sometimes you can put on some warm gauntlets if you happen to have any. It's actually a little bit challenging sometimes to get them into average, and I don't know how you could do them in cold. They're really hot weather outfits. The bounty hunter outfits, curiously, the lowest tier is probably the best looking one. I have 3 different color versions of it, and there's 6 to choose from for each tier. I think the lowest level again is the best looking one. It's got kind of a double-breasted leather short jacket that just comes down to the waist, and it's got some cool, the pants they're just pants, and it's got some cool boots, and it's got a nice looking hat. Unfortunately, the bounty hunter role outfits are a mixture of cues, design and visual cues. Some of them are really cool, some of them are very silly. I think what's especially silly is they have these kind of little tiny capes or ponchos or something around your neck on some of them that unfortunately kind of ruin the outfit. But it's worth getting the bounty hunter outfits for the hats. They do have some of the best hats actually in the game. They're very iconic cowboy style hats with a hat band that's got little gold decorations all around it. Most of them come in black as their default color. Of course, you can get other colors as well. Most of the default colors are kind of dark reddish and black. They feature a lot of leather. They're pretty cool outfits, but again, there's some silly design cues with them. Each role also comes with a horse that's unique to that role. And it comes in 3 different tiers. Or there's a lower level tier that has 2 colors. There's a mid tier, and then there's the top tier. The top tier you actually can't get in the 4th tier. You can't get it until you have maxed out your levels. You have to be level 20 to get it. Of course, the top tier one is the best in terms of stats. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily the coolest colors, and I think that's a real shame in general, and this is especially noticeable on the roll horses, but it's a real shame that they have the same breed of horse that comes in different colors, and some of them are higher tier stats than others. Well, what if you like the color of one of the lower or mid tiers? In the case of the bounty hunter horse, which is a Breton, which is a workhorse from the Brittany coast of France, hence the name. And it's a fairly big horse with, stocky, sturdy, big, hairy hocks. I actually think that the best looking color is one of the mid tiers. It's a dun grulo with primitive markings on it, a dark face mask, and a dorsal stripe. I love the look of that horse, but I didn't get it because I spent the money on a top tier one. The one I have is kind of dappled. It's called steel gray, but it basically looks like a dappled black with white mane and tail. It's like I said, fairly large horse. It has, when it's completely bonded, and if you get the top tier, it's got a full ring of stamina and almost a full ring of health. It's a reasonably fast horse, but its acceleration is really quite slow. It's a really good horse, actually. I quite like it. There's also a saddle that's unique to the role. Unfortunately, and I bought all those saddles, and for a while I put the role-appropriate saddle on the role-appropriate horse. And I resisted for quite a long time getting the Nacogdoches saddles, but of course the Nacogdoches saddles are just better. They're better. The horse is faster when he wears them, and the stamina wears down a lot slower, so you can just keep running and running. And because I spend a lot of my time running across the map, I spend a lot of my time doing collector stuff. You need that in a horse. You need one that can just run. So, unfortunately, the saddle looks really cool. I can't recommend it. because the Nacogdoches saddle is just too much better. What else can you get with a bounty hunter? There's some role-specific reskins of some of your weapons. The bolt-action rifle, unfortunately, it looks really stupid. I didn't get it because I don't like the look of it. There is a bounty hunter wagon that you can do when you have multiple bounties, like the well, actually that one's a little different. But if you have, one of those, two brothers or a gang of 3 or 4, you can put them in the wagon. Unfortunately, to summon your wagon is really clunky, and it basically replaces your horse. So it's really difficult to do bounties with a wagon, which means it's not a good investment, and it's really kind of a pain. It's always better to have the horse. However, that means that it's really difficult to do bounties where you have more than one bounty, because you can't very easily take one in while the other one's probably escaping, and that makes it very difficult. I tried a few, and I had a little bit of luck with some of them, but I mostly just avoid doing the bounties that are more than one person entirely. I don't like doing them, and I just kind of don't. What else do we have with the bounty hunter that's worth getting? There's also the reinforced lasso, highly recommended. It makes it much more difficult for the bounties to break out when you hog tie them. It takes them much, much longer. That's actually the only reason that I was able to have any success, quite honestly, with a couple of bounties that were 2 or more people, is that I tied one up, chased the other one down, turned him in, and came back, and he was still tied up because the reinforced lasso is strong enough that he hadn't been able to get away. So that's the bounty hunter. There's a few other things I can't remember off the top of my head, but those are the things I think are worth mentioning about the bounty hunter. Again, it was the last one of the 4 roles that I finished. It does end up getting a little tedious, and I kind of put off and didn't do it for a long time. Now that I'm actually at a point where I'm not necessarily in a hurry to save money for anything right now, and I'm just kind of, and I don't. It's not that I don't have some income, but I kind of at the point where I actually playing for the sake of enjoying playing again, and that's where I'm having a little bit more fun with the bounty hunter role. The next one I want to talk about is the trader. The trader role basically is kind of misnamed. What it really means is that you hunt a bunch of animals, you bring them to your camp, give them to Cripps. He renders them into quote-unquote goods, whatever they are exactly, and I suspect that they're mostly things that are made out of animal hide, clothes or bags or purses or jackets or belts or whatever the heck you make out of animal hides. And then you take a wagon load of those goods, when you have enough of them, to somebody who will buy them. Quite often when you get there, the buyers are under attack by gangsters, so you hop off the wagon and kill them all, then finish turning the wagon in. And that's the trader role in a nutshell. It really involves a lot of hunting and bringing your stuff to Cripps. And then it involves making a delivery at the end of that. And it takes usually a while to get enough that he can make a delivery, especially once you get to the large delivery wagon where you need to get up to 100 goods. It's always worth it to wait till you have the maximum amount that you can deliver, because the payout is much better. If you have even one less than the maximum, the payout is much, much less. It's also always worth it to make a long distance delivery rather than local, unless, of course, you're trying to just get a daily challenge by making a local delivery. I prefer not to do that, though, because the payout for a long distance large wagon is over $600. What is it? $645, I think, $640. It's quite a bit of money, and there are a few things in the game that will pay out that big. Now, and there's another type of mission too. Hold on, in order to make these goods, Cripps needs supplies. Not just material. Materials is animal parts, but then supplies are tanning fluids and whatnot. You can always buy them for $20 a pop, and for a full large wagon load of 100, you probably need to do about four supply loads probably. Or you can do the mission and just go pick some up. Then usually that means stealing them from a rival. Occasionally it means fighting some gangsters off from some friends, and then they give you a wagon of supplies as a gift. There's one guy, he's a friend of Cripps, that you can just go and he wants animal parts. And like, for example, he may want a couple turkeys. And of course the turkeys will spawn really close to him. It's kind of dumb if you think about it, that he gives you a whole wagon full of supplies for 2 turkeys that he could go shoot 100 feet away from where he's standing on his own if he would just do it. But, it's a mission. The ones that are difficult is when he wants a wagon full of the tanning fluid. It's one of those tank wagons, because it will get easily damaged either by bumping into stuff or being shot at by rivals as you're trying to drive. That one is, I think, the one that I like the least, and I rarely was able to bring a full one in. I've actually gotten to the point now, because I've maxed the rollout and because I usually have enough money to do stuff when I want, I just buy the supplies. But for a long time I didn't, and it's a good way. Not only is it a pretty decent little mission to do, it's a good way to get roll XP. It was a good way to get Outlaw Pass XP when I still needed that. The trader roll, quite honestly, it was one of the rolls that it was my main source of income for a while. And back when I was still new and I was still thinking that stranger missions were kind of cool and they were worth doing, the trader was pretty good. And at the time I was doing, small delivery wagons and whatnot. The trader comes with also 4 different tiers, and it comes with a horse. This is called the Cladribur. A lot of people don't like the Cladribur because he's got kind of a funny profile, and they actually do look like this. It is a real breed. Most of these horses are real breeds, and it's a breed from Czechoslovakia, and it has a little bit of a funny profile. The nose kind of has a bump or a ridge along it. I actually really like the look of the Cladribur. The Cladribur has a full health ring and a full stamina ring. He is one of the toughest horses in the game. Like the Breton, he has a personality where he's not easily frightened. You can take him into fights. You can take him up against, if you get attacked by wolves or bears or whatever, he tends to stay, relatively calm and can be calmed. He's a pretty good horse. I will say, though, that the Cladribur is quite slow. He's not very fast. He has not only slow speed, but also slow acceleration. Because of what I spend most of my time doing, I don't really like the Cladribur anymore. I did for a long time, and I used it with the Trader saddle, which I also think is a pretty cool-looking saddle. And as I've gotten to the point where I spend most of my time just rushing back and forth across the map, I just am frustrated by how slow it obviously is compared to other horses that I could be riding instead. So I don't ride them very much anymore, and I don't use the saddle even when I do. And, again, it's got the same problem as the others, where what if you don't like the top tier coat? There's one of the mid-tier coats is Cremello, and it looks like Buell. And it's a shame that, hardly anybody's going to buy that, because it's the mid-tier horse. And who wants the mid-tier horse if you can just wait a little bit longer, save up a little bit more money, and get the top-tier horse? So I didn't get it either. I'm not a huge fan of Buell. My daughter, for example, really wanted it. The other problem with the Trader, there's a couple problems with the Trader too. The Trader, because it is the majority of what you're doing is hunting animals and taking it to your camp, it has been devastating to try and do the Trader role when there have been a number of glitches where your camp disappears and it isn't there, and you can't turn any animals into the camp, or animals aren't spawning and you can't find any animals to begin with. They finally, I think, more or less fixed the animal spawn issue. It's probably not. Sometimes if I play in the middle of the night for whatever reason, there's a ton more animals than there are otherwise. So clearly it's not at 100%, but it works well enough, and you can usually find animals when you want them without. And actually, I think when animals are at 100%, they're too easy and they're too plentiful, and it's kind of like, geez, you can't even, ride to the next town over without almost running over animals left and right. So I think that's actually kind of worked out, but I still have had a lot of issues with the camp not being there when I try to turn them in. This has really impacted how much I play the role, and luckily I've got it all maxed out. It's not a big deal. I don't do a full delivery wagon very often because I don't spend a lot of time hunting animals anymore, because it's really frustrating to have some animals on your horse and you try to turn them in and your camp's not there. So I've kind of gotten over doing that, quite honestly. What are some things that you can buy? Like I said, there's the horse, there's the outfits. The outfits are, some of them I kind of like. They have, kind of a leather buckskin type look to them, but as you get up there, they actually look fancy, which is funny for a buckskin and leather outfit. But, the top one's really kind of fancy, although it has a kind of a stupid hat. I kind of like some of the outfits. Again, they're also hot weather outfits. I use the Tier 1, again, as a hot weather outfit, and I changed the hat and kind of put the Pittman, tricorn colonial hat on, and I kind of look like a little bit like a Daniel Boone style frontiersman. It's kind of a good look. I actually don't mind the outfits. I don't love them. They're not the best. I don't use them a lot, but I have at least one of each tier outfit, one color, and they're not bad. The horses, again, aren't bad, but they're slow. Everything else other than their speed is actually really, really good, but their speed is really quite slow. There's some stuff that you can buy for your camp. There's like the stew pot, for example, which I've heard a lot of people say is kind of a really underrated thing. Every time I'm in my camp and every time I spawn, I always eat a bowl of stew, and it fills up my cores, and it's kind of nice that it's there. I used to throw big game meat in, because then you get superior stew that gives you gold cores, but I don't anymore because I've had so many issues with my camp and having to, either respawn or get kicked out or whatever, that, I feel like it's kind of wasted if I do that and I only get to do it once, because it lasts for several days, or several in-game days. Maybe it's worth doing anyway, but I don't. I haven't been making that in a while. There's also a couple of cosmetic things that you can get. There's another thing that's a little bit frustrating is you have to buy a medium-sized delivery wagon, which upgrades your load size from 25 to 50. You actually have to buy it, and it's really pricey. And then after you buy it, within, you make 1 or 2 deliveries, and you unlock the ability to get the large one, which upgrades it from 50 to 100. And so then your medium one is just a sink of a bunch of money. It's 800 something, some odd dollars. It's a lot of money for something that you're only going to use once or twice. So it's a little bit of a frustrating thing. There's another wagon that you can buy that's optional, and it is a game wagon, and you can throw more, or hunting wagon. You can throw more animal carcasses in it. Now, again, if you can rely on your camp to be there, this is kind of nice, because you can only carry so many animal carcasses on your horse. Of course, you can only carry one large one. You can carry some skins underneath that. You can attach some small ones to the side of your horse. If you're close enough to your camp, you can carry a second large one over your shoulder and whistle for your horse. And I've done that plenty. But, ideally what you want is the hunting wagon, because you could put up to 5 animals, and there are 5 large animals, 10 smaller animals. And you can make a delivery. You can hunt for a while and then actually turn stuff into crypts and feel like you made some real progress, instead of just a little tick on how much material you have. But all in all, the trader's a little flat. There's not a lot to do. You just keep hunting, and then you make deliveries, and then you do supply missions, which actually, like I said, I don't do. And I don't really engage with the trader role very much anymore because of the bugs and glitches, which have made it unreliable. So I'm glad I got it maxed out when I did. And some of the stuff that comes with the role, I kind of like, but it's a little frustrating. The collector is the third role. This one you have to go find Madame Nazar, who has a little wagon that she moves around all the time. Once you find her, you can buy the collectible bag, and basically you become one of her agents looking for treasures and bringing them to her to sell. The treasures come in several different varieties. For example, there's a set of coins, and there's 15 different coins. Every day you can find all 15 coins. There's one place on the map where each coin is. and then every day it resets and they are moved to different places. And that's the coin. There's other ones too. There's lost rings, there's antique alcohol bottles, there's flowers. There could be more than one of the flowers all over the place. And there's these different sets. And what you're supposed to do is buy these maps from Madame Nazar that show you the location of 3 of them. And it's supposed to be like treasure hunting. How it really works is that everybody's kind of figured out what the pattern is, and you can easily go find online where somebody has said, okay, we're on cycle 4 for coins today. Here's where they all are. And then you just go run around and pick them all up and take them to Madame Nazar. The coin is the best one to do. It's if you have a full set, it's over $500. It's $545. If you really want to spend some time, and the most time I spent was about 3 hours. I got the coins, I got 2 of the lost jewelry ones, and I got some other stuff too. Maybe I got 3 of the lost jewelry. I can't remember, but I got almost $1,700 just running around. And it's hard to not do the collector this way because it is so lucrative and you can make so much money. But quite honestly, it kind of sucks the fun out of it to do it this way, and it's a little bit of a shame. I know that they didn't mean it to be this way, but because the pattern is so predictable and because the treasure maps are frankly kind of overpriced, if you don't have the whole set and if you don't do it an entire set every day, you actually could lose money trying to do the collector roll because the maps are too expensive. It's kind of a shame. It would be hard to fix it. I mean, they can fix it. They can they could just randomize everything instead of having them in cycles, and they could lower the cost of the maps so that people go do that. But because we've been doing it as we have for as long as we have, I think most people are going to kind of rebel and just drop it and not do it anymore, quite honestly, if that's what they do. It's a real shame. The collector roll could have been a lot of fun. It could have been this cool kind of treasure hunting type of roll, and it kind of just turned into this tedious runaround doing these tasks, and it's just like a chore to do, but it's really hard not to because it pays so much money. The only thing that I do think is really kind of cool about it is it takes you into places that you might not otherwise see, and you get to run around and find weird little corners of the map far away from any road or town or whatever, places where you'd never otherwise go, and you see some weird little things like, oh hey, there's a lost jewelry in a box underneath a deer carcass on this weird little cliff, stuff like that. And it's just stuff that you would otherwise, you go places you wouldn't see, you get to see more of the map. So I got to give it some props for that. The collector comes with a pretty cool horse. It's called the Criollo in Spanish. We just call it the Criollo because we speak English and I don't care that it's double L. Creole, the word itself, of course, refers to 100% ethnic Spaniards, but from the New World, and they are the highest caste, I guess, if you will, in Nueva España's, class system. They were, like I said, they were 100% ethnic Spaniards, and so they kind of, were the top of the social hierarchy, and they still kind of are, to be perfectly honest with you. If you watch Mexican commercials, for example, you will notice that they don't cast the Indians, they cast the Spaniards, the Mexican Spaniards, the Criollos. But anyway, that's what this horse is. Stat-wise, it's almost exactly the same as the Missouri Foxtrotter, which is considered by many one of, if not the best horse in the game. That said, I think a lot of people, they already had Missouri Foxtrotters, so the Criollos kind of didn't really excite them much, and I'm not sure they necessarily liked the colors either. I actually have a top-tier Criollo, and I have that instead of a Missouri Foxtrotter, so that's cool, but, it's whatever. It's a pretty fast horse. I use it a lot when I'm just kind of running around. Its health is about 3/4, and its stamina is pretty good. It's a good horse, but like I said, I don't see a lot of people riding them around, and I think it's because they're like, well, with stats that are almost identical to a Missouri Foxtrotter, heck, I've already got one of those, so why do I need another one? What else do we have? There's some cosmetic upgrades. There's, a Lancaster rifle reskin, which I did buy, and I haven't bought a lot of the weaponry skins either because I don't use those weapons or I didn't like the reskin. Lancaster rifle I did buy. It also comes with, I think, the best outfits of any of the roles. I really like the look of the collector outfits. They kind of are very typical explorer from kind of the golden age of exploration type of look. And in fact, there's a hat too that you can unlock, and you buy it from Madame Nazar, and it's a pith helmet. It's straight up a pith helmet. They have balloonist goggles. There's just some kind of cool looking things you can buy, and I really do like the outfits. There also some of the things that you want to buy, although they're very expensive. The shovel and the metal detector are essential because the collectibles that really pay out are the ones that you need the metal detector and the shovel to get. As you get unlocks, you also there's a lot of collectibles that you find just by running around and your controller vibrates and you're like, oh, I'm near a collectible. Usually those will be bottles or antique alcohol bottles, or they will be flowers while you're riding around, or there will be tarot cards that are just kind of laying around. Occasionally there will be jewelry that's also sitting around somewhere where you can find it, or a family heirloom. It usually will not be the coins or some of the other things that are buried a little deeper. But, that's kind of cool. There's also some binoculars you can buy. I have not heard that anybody says they are worth it. What they do is that you can see when you're an eagle eye, you can see the collectibles with the little golden motes. It's very similar to finding clues in single player stuff. You can see them from far away with the binoculars. They may come in handy if they change the role, but right now everybody just looks at a map online on their phone and they know exactly where the collectibles are, so you don't need to ever quote unquote find them using that. But again, the collector role, it's probably the one that I spend the most time on. It's probably the one that most people spend the most time on because it pays so well. But it's a little unfortunate because it's a little tedious to do. The fourth role is the Moonshiner, and this is one I think that set the pattern for what the rest of the roles are going to look like in the future. It came with a whole new set of story missions, and they're really good story missions. They're as good as anything in single player. They're as good as some of the better single player story missions. They're better than any of the online original Land of Opportunity story missions. You can play them solo, although they can be kind of difficult because there's wave after wave of enemies that comes through most of them, and you might need to be a little more tactical, be a little more careful, have your ability cards jacked up so that you will be getting health back and have some potent health cures ready to chug when you need them, because they can be difficult to play solo, but you can do them, and I played through all of them solo, so it's certainly doable. They are highly recommended. Again, some of these are really good missions. The other thing that it comes with is a property, the Moonshine Shack. You pick one of 5 locations. I picked Tall Trees kind of on a whim just because I felt like I don't spend much time in Tall Trees, and that would give me an excuse to. It has become, I think it's one of the 2 best locations to put your Moonshine Shack now, though, and I have no intention, I don't think, of moving it unless there's things that change in game. However, you say you get a property, it's not really your property. There's a character in the story missions, Maggie, who it's really hers, and in many ways she's really kind of the boss, and it's not quite what you would want from the GTA businesses and the GTA properties, which you would think that it would be modeled after more closely. It's not really quite the same thing. What you do other than the story missions is, the first 2 story missions are especially crucial. One of them is you go rescue Marcel, who's your moonshine cook, and then the second one is you go steal a still, basically, and bring it back so that he can start making moonshine. And then There's a lot of expensive things that you can buy, but you need to buy them. There's 2 different still upgrades that are both, almost $1,000 each. They're $800 or $900. There's a bar that you can add, kind of underground bar, and it's $900. The still upgrades are super important. The first one allows you to upgrade your moonshine from weak to average. The second one allows you to upgrade your moonshine from average to strong. The bar is completely cosmetic. It does not make you any money. It doesn't make you anything. It's kind of fun though, and it does have some benefits. Otherwise, a lot of people kind of complain, it's like, why don't I get to make any money? This is totally a waste. Well, no, it's not. For one thing, when you have a bar, you can go drink your own moonshine, which is nice because especially if you're making strong moonshine, you get 3 gold rings around all your stats when you do it. The other thing that it does is that almost every day there are daily challenges that involve something in your bar, either drinking your own moonshine, dancing with your band, playing with your band, inviting some players to your moonshine bar to serve them some alcohol, having a drunken interaction where you kind of just mess with somebody when you're drunk, another player. So almost every day there is a daily challenge associated with the moonshine bar. So you don't make it back in cash, but you can make quite a bit of gold off of your moonshine bar if you have it. So I think it's worth getting. And I enjoy having it. I actually think it's kind of a lot of fun. I do think that it's expensive to do the moonshine roll, but one thing that the moonshine roll does is that it provides relatively passive income. Once you have strong moonshine and you go out and find, and I forgot to mention, the other thing too is you have your basic moonshine, but then you can flavor it, and if you flavor it, you can sell it to a specific buyer for a much higher cost. So once you can have strong flavored moonshine, you can make pretty good money. And all you gotta do is you gotta start it. You gotta go to Marcel and start making the batch. It takes him 48 minutes. Once you get to the point where you have moonshine efficiency and it's a little bit shorter, it takes them 48 minutes, and then you go make a very short delivery mission, and then you run back to your shack, start another batch. It's fairly passive. All you gotta do is you gotta go to your shack, start the batch, and then you gotta go to your shack when you're done and make the delivery. And it only takes a few minutes to do, and every time you do, you get a net $200. I always make a 3-star moonshine. All of the 3-star moonshines are kind of a pain because they all require a collectible as an ingredient. However, the Wild Creek moonshine uses the Plum Creek, which is a flower. Realistically, nobody really cares about selling flowers because that's not really worth it to do. You can get 3 of them a day. You can hold 10 of them at a time. It takes that and some vanilla flowers and some wild mint, and it's not hard to kind of keep yourself stocked up on those. And it makes $247 a delivery. Now, in order to do a delivery, there's also a cost. You got to do a mash. You got to buy mash, which is the basic raw ingredient. You can lower the cost by doing bootlegger missions. I've gotten to the point where I don't anymore because they wear out after like an hour, and also I'm doing other things. It would be great. I did them when I was, again, trying to rank up the Moonshiner roll quickly, and I was spending just a lot more time on Moonshiner, but where I've migrated it to it being more passive, I now just buy it, and it costs $50, so my net income is $197 instead of $247. If they change the collector roll and it's harder to find the creek plums, I won't make Wild Creek anymore. I'll probably reduce it down to a 2-star moonshine. The evergreen one does not require any collectibles. It only requires evergreen huckleberry, which is very easy to find, wintergreen berry or winterberry, which is a little harder to find, but I've marked some places in the Cumberland Forest where they are, and so it's not hard for me to find them. And then ginseng, which, a guy usually just run up to Chez Porter and pick them at the farm. But then again, you find those if you're spending any time at all looking. I've maxed out the amount of ginseng I can carry too. So that's easy to make. It's about $20 less, but it's worth doing if the collectibles become hard to find in the future with a change to the collector roll, which I think we're all anticipating. So that's how I do it. I think another tip when you're doing your delivery missions, you have to be very careful because it's very easy to damage the bottles, and if you do, you get a much lower payout. You really want to turn in your wagon without any damage. This can be kind of hard. You have to drive very carefully, not bump into anything, and you also have to be careful because almost every time you are going to be stopped by revenuers wanting to inspect your wagon, once they realize you got moonshine, they'll start shooting at you, and that will damage your wagon even more than just about anything other than falling off a cliff will. So how do I do this? There's actually a trick to it that makes it so that I almost always turn in a wagon that's a full 20 bottle load. When you start your delivery, you want to immediately pull out your gun. I use my Lancaster rifle. I pull it out and aim it, or I hit go and then I pull it out and aim it, and then the AI will drive your wagon by itself, and while you just keep your gun aimed. And this is pretty good. It's not 100%. Occasionally you'll go over a little rut, but it won't damage it enough to actually reduce your moonshine. Where you want to take it off, though, is when you get to the roadblock, you want to take it off and do that manually. And when you get to the end of your delivery, you want to take that off and do it manually. Some of the destinations don't work quite well, and you'll bump into stuff. Most of them will, but some of them don't. So just take it off and manually go through the roadblocks, manually go through the very end delivery. When you get to the roadblocks, the other thing too is occasionally they'll just wave you through and not inspect your wagon. But if they want you to stop your wagon, sometimes they will look but then wave you through anyway. But you can't count on that. And if they don't do that, they'll start shooting at you and you'll get your thing damaged. So what I do is I will stop my wagon right before I get to the roadblock, close but not quite there, get off, and then just shoot all the revenuers, loot their bodies, hop on my wagon, put my aim back on so it will drive itself automatically, but then turn my aim backwards because you're going to have more revenuers come riding up on their horses behind you, and you can just be ready to shoot them as you make the rest of your delivery. When I do that, I almost always, unless I do something really careless and make a mistake, I almost always have a completely full delivery. So there's a little tip for you. Again, I've gotten to where the moonshine, I think in a lot of ways, it's going to become my main passive source of income because you can do it. You can make decent money. You can make $200 a pop. It only takes about an hour to do, and you can actually do other things while you're doing it. So it's not really big money like the collectors, but it's enough money to allow you to buy stuff. You do like a few deliveries, and you can even buy an expensive horse or another stable stall or something like that. You can use it to buy, even relatively expensive coats. It's enough money you can buy anything that you would want once you're kind of at my position in the game where I'm over level 100. I've got several nice horses. I've got fully, all my camp is all set up. I've got everything that I need. So the only thing I really like to buy is kind of like the weekly clothes that come out. And if there's anything cool that I don't have, I want to buy it before it goes away again because it's limited time. And then I want to buy, probably another nice horse or two just because I like collecting horses. But because I don't have anything I really need, I don't need a ton of money either. And the moonshine roll gives me enough, especially if because depending on how long I play, there's been times where I've done 3 to 4 deliveries a day. Most times, I'll be honest with you, though, I only do 1 or 2, and I only play for an hour or 2 tops. And it's not like I'm rushing back to my moonshine shack the minute that the moonshine's complete. I'm usually in the middle of something else, and I'll finish that first. So I usually do 1 or 2 deliveries a day, and it gives me a net $200 almost, and that's kind of nice. That's my main source of income, and it's passive, it's relaxing, it doesn't require a lot of effort on my part. That's the way to do it. So that has actually become my favorite role, not only because I like the story missions a lot, but I like the way that it's kind of a passive, decent source of income that is relatively low maintenance. The other 3 roles feel a little primitive in comparison, and I think that the Moonshiner role will be the pattern that they follow for the rest of them. So anyway, there's my discussion of the 4 roles that we have available right now. I'm excited to see what they come up with next. Anyway, we'll talk to you later next time.